Hello, and welcome to this asynchronous lecture on Philip K. Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? This is for Module 3 of the Literatur och Technology course, and I will be taking you through Philip K. Dick's authorship, some of it anyway. Give an overview of some of the novel. Talk about the society that is being portrayed there. Consider some of the themes that Philip K. Dick was particularly interested in. And then speak of Mercerism as a metaphysical intrusion, and being well equipped with Darko Suvin's paradigm, you recognize the metaphysical as being, the opposite of the cognitive. And basically, Philip K. Dick, who is regarded as the science fiction writer's science fiction writer, seemed to have no problem at all going outside the criteria of good science fiction, Suvin's criteria for good science fiction, in order to further his thematic aims, perhaps providing hope for modern man. Who can say? Okay. Philip K. Dick was a child of the Depression. He lived in California for most of his life, but I believe grew up a little bit in Washington, D.C. as well. He was a published science fiction and fantasy author very early on, from 1951. Although he considered this as his stepping stone to become the next Ernest Hemingway. His style is bluntly naturalistic. He's not particularly conscious of the poetry of language, I would say. He has a few clunkers, and the reason this is because he, through certain lifestyle choices, had to churn out his novels. 40 novels, 120 short stories. This is an incredible amount of production, just incredible. F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote almost 5 novels, for instance, although almost as many short stories, I believe. Speed and economic pressures gave his work a pot boiler quality, which means that zany things can happen in terms of plot, and you sometimes get these clunker sentences I alluded to, like, I wonder what's for dinner, he wondered, where, a good editor would take out one of those wonders anyway. Okay. Before 6 years before a life-saving event or life-changing event, Dick published Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. But 6 years after that, he had well, some say it might have been a stroke. But at any rate, he thought that there was a satellite circling Earth that was beaming pure information into his brain, and this information enabled him to correctly diagnose an illness that his son, I believe his son, was suffering from. So not only is there non-cognitivists in his fiction, but one could say that his life became kind of non-cognitive as well. And his last 3 or 4 novels. I would say everything since the 1970 novel A Maze of Death, actually. But his last works involved religion a great deal. His view of the world was a kind of a Manichaean dualism. He called it the black iron prison, I believe was the term. And he was also known to have a slight strain of paranoia. He alleged that the FBI broke into a safe in his office for some reason, or something of that nature. So he wasn't, he was not an untroubled individual, to put it that way. And this black iron prison, a prison world of political tyranny, which he believed was manifested in the 1974 Orange County politics involving Richard Nixon, not coincidentally. And this would put us right now living inside of this black iron prison. So if we are controlled in this fashion, what can humans do with that? Well, they can be nice to each other is basically the short answer. So I want you to appreciate the difficulty, if that's the right word. Well, yeah, the problematic nature of living on the earth, living in San Francisco, that Philip K. Dick portrays in Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. Not only have we had a global world war terminus, so there's all that death and destruction, but with regard to the people who are left, it is it resembles the world of 1967 in some ways, but it is shown to be greatly impoverished in others, greatly impoverished. For instance, you have all of these, the electric sheep, the horse, the squirrels, the rabbits, the goats, the turtles, the tortoises, the toads. So there's all kinds of animals associated with households here. As a matter of fact, it was a law that you had to take care of an animal once upon a time. But in this novel, there are no children. Even though Rick Deckard is categorized as capable of reproducing. He has been cleared for that. Also, there is this a secular authority in tension with a spiritual authority. By combining electronic signals and some sort of an emotional internet, the Mercer box enables us to empathize with our fellow human beings, but we do it through an electronic medium, which is kind of interesting. At the same time, the state-run television features Buster Friendly, running pretty much 23/7 for the secular authority. So, and ultimately, in the conflict portion of the book, these two come into a type of a clash. So we have what I would call a blasted Earth. No stars are visible. All organic life is sacred and legally administered. And in particular, it's the legally administered which is problematic for us here. Because the law touches everything living and non-living, even mechanical. For a world in such ruin, it is impressive how the constabulary and well, the police functions are so thoroughly exercised, and we find out an awful lot in a chapter in which John Isidore is bemoaning how he became a chicken head. And you could see that this is really a very intrusive world. Now let's just start from, shall we say, gentlemanly comforts. This is a iron cod piece, not a lead one. But if you were a man, you had to put on a X-ray proof pair of underwear every time you leave the house. Which means that you've got to deal with this thing every time you urinate, every time you dress or undress. I can't help but it kind of, it might be a mood killer in the act of seduction that we see later in the novel. But nonetheless, you've got a big piece of metal in your pants. To facilitate off-world emigration, diverse companies have made mechanical and biological slaves. And I would like to share something from you that is a 7th or 8th paragraph in the 2nd chapter. And this is before Deckard is going to work, so it's his domestic tableau. You know, we're just seeing how he lives. And before he leaves, he observes the following. The TV set shouted, duplicates the halcyon days of the pre-Civil War Southern states, either as body servants or tireless field hands. The custom-tailored humanoid robot designed specifically for your unique needs, for you and you alone, given to you on your arrival absolutely free, equipped fully and specified by you before your departure from Earth. This loyal, trouble-free companion in the greatest, boldest adventure contrived by man in modern history will provide, it continued on and on. So right off the bat, the Andes, the androids, are deliberately equated with field hands, with slaves from before the American Civil War. Also, their names, Andes, is the other half of a black-faced radio program where two gentlemen performed with African-American voices called Amos and Andy. So both in the abbreviated form for the name androids and in this advertisement, this TV ad that Deckard sees before he leaves for his job, in both cases, the androids are slaves. And the analogy works quite well insofar as androids could be considered as just as smart as human beings, but having fewer civil rights. Like the slaves, the androids do occasionally run away, and they have to be hunted down and killed by a bounty hunter. Now, one could ask the question, why killed? I mean, apparently they're going to sit down for a Voight-Kampff empathy test. It seems to me that, you know, simply putting them under arrest and sending them back to Mars or wherever they had escaped from would have been a cheaper, if nothing else, and more humane, to the degree that we're going to be humane to a robot, a cheaper and more humane solution. But in the logic of the novel, the androids had to be killed. It was assumed that they, and not assumed, but alluded to the likelihood that the real Luft had been replaced, put in scare quotes, intimating, I suppose, there might have really been a Luft before the android took over the place, and that person was killed. I mean, it's not really in our face, but the narrative does not give us a compelling reason why these things have to be killed. Finally, as long as we're talking about the world after World War Terminus, there are frequent intrusive tests to determine whether one is human or android, and if human, whether or not one is a special. And it is suggested, well, no, outright stated, that this can happen in a roadblock. You could just be driving along, minding your business, and instead of getting a breathalyzer exam to see if you're driving drunk, they'll take some of your DNA to see if you're human, or give you a Voight-Kampff test, or compel you to take an IQ test. And if you don't do well on an IQ test, which is a little bit like real life, you will be treated as a special person, and that at the very least reduces your dating prospects, if nothing else, but also job prospects, your whole role in society. Now, the novel begins in a domestic situation, and it ends in a domestic situation. I hope you enjoyed the reference to the Penfield mood organ, which, by the way, comes back briefly toward the end of the novel as well. It's a humorous opening scene, and basically all of the striving, all of the hard work that Rick Deckard does in this novel is to keep his home together, to have his animal up on the roof, to keep he and Iran in creature comforts. Deckard is he's a provider, So we have this 1967 male ideology, 1968 male ideology, superimposed forever into the future. That is naturalized. That is assumed without question. In part 2, which is the middle third of the book, the world that Philip K. Dick has used so much time establishing for us gets twisted in a kind of a pretzel. For instance, in the first section, Deckard is in animosity with the Rosen Corporation. They don't like him. He doesn't like them. And yet, an android, Rachel, briefly offers to help Deckard to hunt androids that are, in one case, exactly like her. Exactly like her. And in other cases, the same model, the Nexus 6 model. We have Deckard having to kill a fellow cop, even though he's Soviet, because he is an android imitating a cop. As Deckard is trying to examine the opera singer Luba Luft, he is arrested by an alternative police department. So the whole, One of Dick's favorite things is what is real, what is artificial, as I'll get to in the discussion below. But nonetheless, already here, it's like, what's the real police? How come I've never seen this place before? Um, in this alternative police department, he meets Phil Resch, uh, who is also a bounty hunter, and he finally kills his boss, a fellow named Garland, who also turns out to be an android. Now, there are very few policemen that have spoken parts in this novel. There is Deckard, there is Brian, there is Garland, there is Resch, arguably there is Polokov. Holden, as far as I recall, never gets a speaking part in the novel. So of those 5 police, 2 of them are androids. And apparently passably good at their job. And interestingly, in this section, the tension is introduced that Phil Resch himself, in spite of owning a squirrel, I believe, named Buffy, that Phil Resch himself could be an android. First, they have to take out Luft, and then they'll give him an exam to see whether or not he is an android. So one could say 2.5 of the 5 cops are considered Andes. They're considered to be ersatz, which kind of splits the logic of the book. Also, naturalizing the predatory male, as we had in My Living Doll, to be sure. Resch basically outlines how he deals with his sexual attraction for android females, and that is sleep with them first and then kill them later. With our 2023 sensibilities, this is hard to swallow. This is rather unusual. And mind you, this is kind of, okay, is it estranged a bit? Yeah, it's estranged a bit. But still, it does deal with male attraction for female figures in a kind of a naturalized fashion. That it is natural that bounty hunters would eventually fall for female androids. Also, of course, Luft is killed by the end of the process, but she is an example of the highest possible culture also for Philip K. Dick. He was an opera buff, loved his Wagner, loved his Mozart. Magic flute features strongly here. So and Luft is a very, very accomplished singer. So she's not a rock star, she's an opera star. And the place of her retirement, the place where she is killed, is also another edifice of high culture. And that is that she was enjoying an Edvard Munch exhibit at an art museum. By the way, Munch, I believe, was shown in San Francisco 10 years earlier, a very large show, and that really solidified his place in the pantheon of artists, particularly in North America. But we do get, by the end, even with Deckard testing himself with the Voight-Kampf here, is he does realize that he is having second thoughts about killing androids, in particular female androids. And then the climax of part 3, it basically is limping back to the domestic tableau of the Deckard Connacht. He buys a female Nubian goat as a surprise for his wife. But his boss says, no slacking here. You have to go out and kill these Andes right now. And Deckard does not believe he is in any shape to do that. So he actually does try to employ Rachel to help him. Although I reckon she helps him all right, but maybe not the way he had originally intended, because they end up having an affair in a hotel room. And Rachel points out to Deckard that the last android on his hit list, his kill list, is a precise copy in every way of Rachel, which was quite naturally potentially made it difficult for Deckard to kill that android. At John Isidore's building, Isidore finds a spider which is killed by Pris. In the end, it turns out to be artificial. Also at this time, the bedrock of the emotional and empathic, I'll say the religious bedrock of this world, is attempted to be destroyed by Buster Friendly. They figure out that Mercer's empathy box broadcast is really just in a soundstage someplace. Wilbur Mercer is an alcoholic. He's an actor down on his luck. But even as a fake, Mercer becomes more. He becomes more metaphysically present after being demystified. It is after Mercer is shown to be a fake, and in the plancher I've asked you to think of people who believe that we did not land on the moon as the kind of fake that it would be. But after he is demystified, Mercer mysteriously shows up and helps Deckard retire in Andy. And at the end of the narrative, or the next to last chapter, Deckard himself literally becomes Mercer. He goes to this desert territory. He climbs a hill. He gets hit with a rock. Finds a toad, which is Mercer's favorite animal. What is all this about? It's kind of like stigmata, where you're so preoccupied with the figure of Christ at Easter that your hands start bleeding. And I should add that one of Philip K. Dick's better novels is called The Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch. So there is, the stigmata element comes in other places as well. But anyway, no matter what, I think that we can agree that Deckard's communion with Mercerism in chapter 21 is pretty non-cognitive. It's metaphysical. It yanks it out of that lovely uh, cognitive estrangement box that Suvin used so much energy to create as a criteria for good science fiction. And then we come back. Deckard is very tired. His secretary is concerned about him. His wife is concerned about him. Iran brews him a nice cup of coffee and enjoys it at the end of the novel. And we're kind of, how should I put this? Well, Deckard's world has totally changed. He's trying to get out of the job of being a bounty hunter. He basically only participated in mercerism as a kind of milk a toast, go along with the trend. But now he's definitely experienced mercerism on his body. Yet at the same time, it kind of ends with a nice cup of coffee, incidentally, right before he falls asleep. So it goes back to that domestic tableau, and a lot of Philip K. Dick's novels end that way. Philip K. Dick novels end that way, with men doing what they've got to do and women doing what they've got to do, and basically what they got to do in the future of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? It's basically what they got to do in 1968. Don't panic and carry on. So, Philip K. Dick's thematic drift. And he basically has two items that he focuses on. What is human and what is real. I'm going to want you to bear with me here because obviously the what is human element comes out in the androids, the specials, and the reproductively endorsed humans of post World War Terminus San Francisco. And I think that we could say that the what is real is sort of played around with the alternative police department, at least as far as Deckard is concerned. He's really worrying about what is real here. At the same time, having this metaphysical intrusion of empathizing totally with a religious figure down to realism, really getting hit by a rock and really hurting. That element of what is real is also quite, well, very present in the novel. Okay? So we have here the real is to the false, the real is to the ersatz, as the natural is to the artificial. So in that respect, Iran is a real wife for all her psychoses and, I beg your pardon, domestic faults. Pris, Rachel, and Luft are not. They're artificial. So, in that respect, in this human and real, you'd think right off the bat, well, we know what's what here. However, both from Rachel's introspection while she's at the hotel room with Deckard, and Deckard's ruminations over having to kill these creatures that, in the case of Luft, are quite cultured. We we're not totally on solid ground here. So for instance, are we going to say a real natural human is one who can pass a medical exam? Perhaps his sperm count is high enough. He has to take an IQ test, or the Voight-Kampff test, or the test that Phil Resch used. Is that what we're really going to use to determine what's real and what's natural? And what's to be respected? And again, I stress, just look how test-orientated this society is. I mean, as a personal aside, it reminded me a little bit of trying to travel to England during the times of COVID, where you kind of had to, if I wanted to do my job, I pretty much had to get, vaccinated. So the medical apparatus was controlling my freedom of movement. Also, we see this real artificial at the very start with the owl, which is offered as a bribe to him, and also Rachel, both of which pass as real, but are later revealed to be ersatz, to be false. And notice that in scare quotes. This is turned upside down by John Isidore fetching a real cat, a real live cat, and admiring the deaf programming that has been put into this creature, which he believes to be a machine. Now, mind you, this actually becomes a growth moment for Isidore. He achieves manly confidence because he can talk on the video phone with the woman who lost the cat. But 2/3 the way through the narrative, Isidore is very clear in that he can recognize that Pris, Irma, and Beatty are all androids. He very clearly recognize that. So this is and he doesn't care, by the way. He likes the company of robots better than nothing. So, or of androids better than nothing. So there's that. So this, what is real, what is false, is we say problematized yet again with this episode. Did a few of you maybe laugh at this? I suppose it's possible. I mean, there's plenty of black humor in this. It is, after all, a total dystopia. But nonetheless, it is a very good exercise of the thematics. Likewise, there's this element of Kippel and the second law of thermodynamics. Everything is going to decay. Everything is going to die. And there is a very strong subtext of meeting your own mortality. You could die at any time. Maybe more so for the androids than for the humans, but nonetheless it is the whole physical universe running down into chaos is not exactly a theme with Philip K. Dick, but it was kind of a it was considered a physical fact that had to, in some measure, be fought against and countered. Likewise, with what is real and what is not real, the Hall of Justice on Mission Street, and also the problem with Phil Resch. I believe I've dealt with that earlier, but that really pushes the what is real and what is human. It basically makes this what the novel is about. So Deckard discovers the toad at the very end. It is artificial to the degree that it eats artificial flies that Iran orders for it. But Iran or Iran, his wife says that he's very devoted to it, and I reckon he will be. Creatures still deserve care, even perhaps mechanical creatures. Okay. The metaphysical intrusion of a Mercerism displaces Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep outside of the rubric of good science fiction determined structurally by Darko Suvin. So it may well be, since he's on TV 23 hours, Buster Friendly himself could be an android, and Mercer then becomes a kind of a human, but does extraordinary things, for instance, showing up and helping Deckard retire the last 3 Andes. I would say that the religious subtext is strong here. How so? Well, Mercer enables us to empathize, to share our feelings with others, and to dissolve our ego in a common human struggle. That's kind of an interesting entryway into a religious experience. The television and the empathy box are rival devices. They present rival stories. One, mindless distraction. The other, a profound human binding hallucination. And ironically, I think, Mercer comes to life as a character to help Rick, and then Rick becomes a character to be Mercer in a way, even to the point of losing his own identity and struggling as Wilbur Mercer. So unless we allow for a profound, sustained hallucination shared by several characters, the presentation of Mercerism is, I would argue, non-cognitive. And then this science fiction novel could be seen to descend into a subgenre. But it's not a happy ending subgenre. It's not a Hollywood ending subgenre. It is a subgenre that is basically allowing some hope for the human being in a post-World War Terminus world. Okay, I've come to the last slide. Thank you very much for staying with me so far. So what about this cognitive estrangement? And I've phrased this a little bit like a catechism. Well, what technologies, it should be technological, but anyway, what sort of technologies / novelties does Philip K. Dick present in the novel? Well, you've got the mood organ, right? And mind you, even a Penfield circuit is used by Roy Beatty when he's setting up the booby traps around Isidore's apartment. We've got the ray gun or the ray gun tube. Uh, we've we've got the codpiece. We've got the protective gear. We've got flying cars. We have electric pets. Um, and the empathy box is, it's basically our cell phone. As Isidore says, there's nothing as personal to a human being as her or his empathy box. So, it's a technology, admit it. Um, but the novum, the technology that really enables all of the thematic elements to play out, is the Andes. How they're used, how they're misused, how they transgress, and their human qualities dominate the description and the action of the novel. So what is estranged? Well, technology coming to life, our attitudes toward it. In the novel and in the adaptation, Rachel's realizations and doubts are secondary to Deckard's, which means that in terms of a dialogic discussion, the human consciousness is weighted more heavily than the android consciousness. And I will conclude by saying it appears to me in many Philip K. Dick novels, he is just fine with jettisoning the cognitive element in order to present some meager hope for humanity. And remember, going back to this psychotic episode where Philip K. Dick thought he was being contacted by an alien intelligence, Godhead to him is cognitive. There is a being that occupies a satellite and can communicate with us. So what is non-cognitive to us might not necessarily be non-cognitive to Philip K. Dick. Alrighty. I thank you for your kind attention. When I post this lecture as a PDF file, I will provide a chapter-by-chapter breakdown of the action of the novel to help you navigate it more easily as you use this novel for your scholarship, to write a paper or to discuss things. I thank you for your kind attention and hope that you got something out of the seminar or will get something out of the seminar, depending upon which of the two audiences I am addressing at this moment. I thank you again for your attention, and I wish you a good day.